Definitely give the info over to Favin, though, and he breaks blood. Hyped as well will contribute. And everybody's had their time in the sun here on the big side. One kill a pop for everyone bar Crimbo, but Heavy God is all that remains. And Big in with their first round. They picked them apart. MHL, considering the start he had, was definitely very confident in the fight he took in middle. He landed the tag, like you said, but over a fight that kind of made things go from bad to worse. And this is the thing, you know, you say that smoke is nerdy, you know, the little one-way in from dark. Big have a bunch of different plays like it. I remember watching their academy squad, and I'll always reference this because it's the one time I've watched an Anubis game where I've seen a T-side team go for like 4 or 5 different nade stacks on very commonly held positions on the CT side, whether that's outside of cave on B, whether that's holding from the doors in middle. You know, there are so many of these different spots that felt like they were sort of trying to find an opening kill based on utility only.
Okay, so I hear you, Michael. And I've got a message for all the teams out there. If you want to anti-strat Big, don't anti-strat Big. Anti-strat Big Academy. And then you know what's coming your way.
I mean, I imagine the prep work is very similar, just how hard they hit is what changes.
This is gotta be so annoying to play up against, alright? Just you're always worried about 8 stack, you're always worried about one ways. Can you even peek into a smoke? What's going on over there? Nah. Trust Big to find everything there is to know on a new map. Keto, though, trust him to find a couple of kills for himself as well. Surreal, quick on the trade. A little bit surprised that he actually finds that one, but with his hand, I am not too surprised, maybe. Mighty Max and Heavy God also wanting to get a little bit aggressive themselves. Crimbo, flashbang, readied up. Hyped is there to cover it off as well. They don't actually swing out from behind the flash, actually. Mighty Max wasn't blind at all.
They're rerouting. Given the fact they'd found one kill on this B bomb side, they don't trust that Endpoint have reinforced it, and they're right in their call. It's Surreal by himself, but we saw the damage he did last time over.
All coming in from behind, though. There's actually going to be a very late hit from B main. Instead, Surreal lines up as the player with the Molotov in his hand, but Favin's a little bit more fortunate with his weaponry. We'll find the frag, still a 3-on-3. Hype trying to peek back out over. Heavy God punishes that mistake. Remember that MHL is still locked out of the bomb site. It will be very hard for him to get back in, and Falvin's trying to exploit him before that can be done. Needs to turn the 2v3 into 2v2. That's exactly what happens, and Tabson peeks out behind it. Mighty Max as well, now trying to take the duel. Tabson goes for the full swing, rather than just playing it defensively. Big, quickly back up to 2, and have successfully broken the Endpoint economy.
Yeah, I mean, great job there from Big, realizing what Endpoint's setup was likely to be, especially after the presence over towards the A site. By the time that Endpoint start to realize that the A play likely wasn't coming, it was a little too late. You know, Surreal needed this backup maybe 2 or 3 seconds before, because that time was running low, and if Surreal had been able to drop that bomb in transition or stayed alive for maybe a couple seconds longer, there was a real chance that Big wouldn't have had enough time to set up in post plants or even dial in those digits comfortably. But Big exploring as deep as they could with the clock that they had. Ultimately, re-navigating away from where most of Endpoint forces were. So they're down to pistols. In spite of the good start that Endpoint had, they kept the good times rolling for a period. It will bend the knee.
Michael, maybe actually hold the point, because they're going a little bit further ahead than I thought they would early on. Can Sassanito perhaps earn his luck around with the USB? I hope he gets 1 kill just for his sake. You know what? don't want the stand-in to have too much of a bad time. Unfortunately, that's exactly what ends up happening. Keto is also just in, and this gives me a chance to talk about something a little bit silly, Michael. Michael, maybe it's actually better if you have only one player against you is going like 0 for whatever. Because if you've got 3 players going 0 and 5, you know they're going to wake up, right? You can't have 3 players asleep at the wheel. That just never happens.
Now we're back to this,
One
are we?
player. Yeah. I've been thinking this for a while. I won't lie to you.
It's like, actually, in a twisted way, it might be better. I can see it. I get where you're coming from.
Please
Chances
don't.
of 3 players going absent for the entire game are much lower. No round is ever guaranteed, nor comebacks into games either. Big have had to work pretty hard for these, for at least the first couple of rounds. Of course, that one was much easier given that Endpoint were on pistols. But there is an absence certainly being felt on the CT side, where Surreal and Sasanito are trying to sort of link up together. You know, Sasanito has been getting the poorer end of the stick. He's been getting shot through one-way smokes. He's been getting instantly domed or hit by, you know, these opening duels that the Big are going for. He has not had the best of showings thus far, but I don't know that you could really blame him for it.
Keto's still in pursuit. Doesn't back off at all. They don't have any flashes that they're willing to use over here either. The double swing will have to do. Sasanito finds Keto and gets the better of him. But in the meanwhile, Big have quickly responded and tried to go back over in middle. That's a missed smoke if I've ever seen one, though. Gliding into the body, they're going back inside B with a flank, but it is punished. MHL and Surreal both find a kill apiece, and that will keep things in the favor of Endpoint. However, Tapson has slipped the net. This might be a freebie being lined up for him soon, and indeed it is. Surreal is gone, and MHL will be late to the party, will be Molotoved off by the time he actually comes back over, and Tapson's taken the chance to move back to CT spawn and look for a second flank that Heavy God seems to be ready for, and Tapson will not go any further. Heavy God pre-fires it. Remember, Tapson was spotted out moving back, so Heavy God could have maybe expected that. Leaves hyped all alone. He's had a rougher game so far, 1 and 6. Wouldn't need to triple his skills, and well, he's in the position to do it. Good for 1. And MHL with the AK around the corner is tagged, but it's through the wall. Endpoint will find the 6th.
Oh dear. I mean, there were so many twists and turns to this round. Even though they were at a deficit in a 2-on-3, Tabson's flank, he wanted to fish for more kills. He knew he had a timing that could potentially be exploited, but the fact that Surreal even turned around to a certain degree is what kind of makes that moment kind of unravel. And once Heavy God got the nice reaction peak onto Tabson, it really changed the affair entirely. 1v1 hyped was definitely at an advantage, but yeah, that clipping on the wall, that makes all the difference. And point answer back. It's a streak of 3 from the Big Clan. They've got some residual cash, but look at the aggression this time over here from Endpoint. Heavy God clearing things out towards A main. They were very loud about their presence, and that will actually prompt Big to accelerate over to B.
And in that acceleration, Surreal's already come underfoot. Keto and Tabson. The entries are fantastic. This time MHL will not be able to save them in a late round. Perhaps Endpoint need to turn around and just save themselves, but they've lost another rifle that cannot be recovered. Mighty Max and Sasanito will be left to just an SMG and an M4 that you just have to take forward. And this is always going to be the problem with, you know, I mentioned in the pregame, you sort of you tied onto it, saying you expected Sasanito to be the player. We thought Endpoint would have maybe 2 players who are going to be able to consistently perform over here, right? MHL plus 1. Surreal ends up being the guy. But sometimes you're just going to get headshot. Where's the backup then?
Yeah. Can't always account for just
how is he clearing for that?
Losing the duel. I mean, he's just being extra careful. I feel like Big are a team that have that ingrained in their mentality. Very rare that you see a position uncleared by at least one person.
Yeah.
It might not be the first guy out, but... I'll even call a time maybe to get a gauge on where the economy is at for Endpoint, given that they saved a couple of weapons over. You know, the fact that Big went on that streak of 3. There is a decent amount of loss bonus built up for the Endpoint side, at the very least. But not enough that we can see to facilitate full investment. Just doing the calculations themselves, getting the advocates out. Just really solid timing on those first 2 swings. The smoke was fading at the right time as well for Big to make their move in. It also lasted long enough for them to find an isolated duel. No buy around these 2 saved weapons. Endpoint will be relying on Max and Sasanito. It is decent though. Already down to 49. That's more than half his HP, albeit barely. Getting aggressive. Oh, Sasanito spotted, and Tabson has just been so sharp, dealing with both rifles that were saved over. Those are the biggest threats that Endpoint had.
That's just around over and done with Endpoint. Tabson now up to 11, by the way. Team is still somewhat trailing behind, but seems like Big catching up is inevitable.
This is how Mirage started too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit less rounds for Endpoint, yeah?
Yes, aside from that.
They're also just watching out for the potential of someone dropping down and trying to go for the flank with the rifles. They will let Endpoint recover the rifles. I don't know whether that's a priority for them to hunt down or not, but that is not insubstantial.
Big the type of team to hunt after 20 seconds have elapsed on that bomb timer. They're already pretty fanned out already, and yeah, they look to watch guard over the guns, but they'd already been retrieved. Tabson put it together potentially a few seconds too late. But they are boxed in completely, so mid is all that they will have as safety. They might be able to fight their way out of the situation, but they've only got so many bodies that they can hold onto these weapons with, and MHL and Surreal will secure what looks to be an exit. Surreal, in fact, might just fold a Crimbo, considering he takes a path less trodden by the rest of the squad, and yeah, Surreal dropped. But there was a buy coming here for Endpoint in the following round regardless. Just nice that they keep an AK for potential one-shot headshots.
And just for the viewers back home, right? I mean, you're hearing Michael say a lot of things like, oh, Big is the type of team to go hunt after 20 seconds. Big is the type of team to go clear all the quarters. It's very hard to cast Big and not remind people that they are sort of the perfect team. It's just that they don't have the perfect players sometimes, right? That's the old school problem of national teams, and Big is very much the ultimate embodiment of what some consider is an era gone by.
Yeah. Feels antiquated to a certain degree, the style that they sometimes implement, but it looks damn good when it works. The cleanest Counter-Strike that you can see.
Nade and bullets both being caught by Big, and it will continue with MHL's AWP finding a second.
That's just a nice little flow peak from one angle to the next, just so ready for each of those duels. And Big decide, okay, if he's going to be doing that, we'll go the other way. Let's stay away from MHL. He's already at 16 kills. Well, that's a jiggle, and immediately tail between his legs. Max realizes that it's probably the whole squad linking up together, considering the early disadvantage that Big find themselves in.
Oh my god, they are expecting it and he gets both! Tabson's been watching out for that for so long behind the smoke, he just knew that if Endpoint want to get information, it is very unlikely that they go for a push with Surreal in that circumstance once mid has been breached, because that makes the rotation too far. And now with this much mid control, they can go anywhere they want. It'll be through CT back to A, and because Endpoint have 2 players push far forward, Sasanito doesn't feel comfortable moving out either. This could just be a free bomb site and a free bomb plant with it. Heavy Code will make his way back. And he's got enough time to potentially stop the bomb from dropping. There's only 7 seconds. Let's not forget that. But Tapson will get to cover. And with the Molotov at Heavy Gold's feet, it is a full 3 versus 3. At Endpoint need to find out all through the same angle as well.
Going to be trying to set up for retake utility from outside of A main, but they're all clustered in the same direction, and Big have fanned out to search for clues. They've even got a flank coming towards A main, so Heavy God, while he throws the nades, he gets dropped by Crimbo, and Sasanito's suddenly left on an island, a 1-on-3 ahead of it, and Tatson, sure, he's been able to deal with the in-game leader, but Sasanito just doesn't have the time nor the presence to prevent both players from taking his head, and Favin will collect. So Big, after what was a opening 5-0 deficit, have clawed this right back to equal numbers, 6-6, after what was a 3-on-5 they convert.
Man, that presence from Tapson is unreal. They should never have had a chance. I can't even blame Endpoint, to be honest. I don't blame them. This seems like one of the safer ways to get information. But you just get owned sometimes, man.
Yeah, and Tapson keeps owning. Even finds Max straight through mid.
Yeah.
Favin's just thinking, why me?
I think Favin's more thinking thank you to Tapson right now. Because he is 17-9.
Yeah, he's playing lights out.
Yeah.
Albeit this was against the Pistols, so it wasn't exactly the most threatening of a round from Endpoint, but well, even in the rounds where they have guns, Tabson styling on them. Tim and Crimbo leading the way for the big clan, but I mean, that is just unfortunate, really. The rest of the squad have had some difficulties actually converting kills, whether it's been Hype or Favin. Haven't seen the same success, but they've been important in their own respects to get opening frags. Tabson this time is dropped at the opener, and Keto right past the Molotov, running straight into this B bomb site. Surreal at least will be able to trade things out, but that's given information over to Favin as to where he's located. Rotates are here aplenty though on Endpoint.
There he goes, Hyped, he's out. So Endpoint, with that, they will keep themselves in the game at the very least, but I am getting a little bit worried about what the second half will have in store for us from them as well, considering that so far a lot of these picks that they found have been off the back of some good timings from MHL and Surreal respectively. Not really been as much of a team effort. Although in all fairness, you could say the same about Big. And CT side will be proving difficult for them as well. Before we get there though, 2 more rounds to go, including this one. Big completely slowing things down. We'll have a buy in the next round regardless, so you will see them at least try to make an attempt for it. Smoke down to give Falvin a bit more space to work around. Can he get the pre-fire is the question. Without that, MHL should have this one for free. A deep smoke back to Glyph as well to keep Mighty Max at bay. A Molotov behind MHL to make it so the only way he has to go is forward, and forward he goes. Gets himself the quick 2. 3 in total for Endpoint's 7th.
It is very strange to see the game be as topside heavy as it is for both teams, really. Tabson, Crimbo, you have Surreal and MHL really picking up a lot of the pieces in these rounds. Not uncommon for one team to have this occur to them, but both at the same time. We'll link up over on that B-bomb site once again. These 2 powerhouses here on the Endpoint side. Favin just running interference. He's just an extremities player there on the default. And the nade lined up. They should be able to catch Favin in transition. That's what they're hesitating this peek for. No flash, just the 3-man peek out dry, and Favin gets offered up ahead, but Surreal looks to try and pursue. MHL will have a chance to deal with him, but Hyped there as reinforcements. Favin trading, Sasanito struggling on the duel, but finally finding it. And Keto in from behind, in from underpass, knows that there must be one more man here. Surreal has been such a nuisance before, but he's suddenly left on an island over on that B bomb site. There's a massive gap to be exploited here on the big clan, but that bomb is still in T-spawn, so they're going to be very late to the party.
That's actually a really big mistake, leaving the bomb right in the sidelines with the players pushing out while Falvin gets aggressive on his own and ends up being a tasty morsel for Endpoint to pursue. They get more than what they thought they would out of it with the information. They have stopped holding for the bomb on Endpoint's side, so at the very least it can be recovered safely. However, Big are also completely clueless about their positioning, other than the fact that there is one player here in this B bomb site. But do they just walk through the smoke? Remember, that'll be up until about, 17 seconds, maybe 16 if they're lucky, but so they will just end up pushing through it. That's the only option they have. They're also maybe even expecting the fact that with the smoke being deployed at that time, this is more likely to come through from Endpoint. The bomb can be planted, and Endpoint have just unfortunately gambled incorrectly.
Tabson behind the Molotov and using it as safety, but Surreal comes out ahead in the fight. And Heavy God committing to the flank, but walking the whole way. They have time, they have kits, and Crimbo can only be in so many positions given that Surreal's been able to maintain control of Temple, and Heavy God's coming in on that flank.
Crimbo could have gone back into CT, and that's something they will have to be continually wary of. But with the bomb being planted the way it is, that is not going to be likely at all. Flashbang there. Surreal has gone. A smoke down as well. Heavy God in a one-on-one. Simply can't get it done. Crimbo proves to be the right-hand man of Tabson as always.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, we touted him as a late-round closer, and he shows us exactly that. But a bit of a misstep there from the Endpoint side. You know, you're sort of saying that they've actually been able to spot the bomb. I don't think that they did over in B main. That's why they take that gamble to clear out middle. But then in that 2v1, you know, having the utility that they did, if they were concerned about any position, it probably should have been dark, given the limited amount of angles that Crimbo could have been in. You know, when you're in a 1v2 like that and the bomb's not planted for you, you need to try and force a fight. And when they cleared CT, you know, that's one of those things you kind of put together. But very labored. Obviously, in a pressure position, they're fighting for their lives in the CCT Online Finals. Big already have that map advantage. They come into this half with an advantage as well, even though they trailed at the start of it.
Nice shot from Tabson early in. Surreal. One of the two big hot shots taken down.
As well as gathering so much information, and Max will miss a timing in which he could have potentially spotted out this dark push through the canals. Heavy God will re-clear it and actually find him as well, so not a missed timing, just a different one.
Amichella collects on Tabson, and that means that the B-bomb site is completely free and open for business. Sasanito spots out the one. Should have an idea that both might be coming over if they've done their homework and know their spots, which I'm sure they have. Meanwhile, MHL is setting up for a flank. Now, there could be timing for Hype to potentially find a kill or two while MSL is disjointed, but because they've taken it slow, Crimbo is likely just going to end up stabbed in the back. MHL positioned very nicely, and Crimbo missing a shot means that he will have absolutely nothing. Fantastic stuff from Endpoint coming through right there. One kill is really all it takes.
Yeah, drew the additional presence out from that B-bomb site as well to allow them in. Once Heavy God got his frag onto Keto, felt like that was the first card on what was the whole house plummeting down. Tabson taking that peak. Just incredible consistency from MHL in these pistols, and really on Anubis as a whole. It's him and Surreal, but Big come in with only USPs and a singular flash that they're hoping can do some damage.
And this is the point for Big. They just come through and hope that they don't lose too much to Endpoint, Mac 10s in particular. A kill or two would be nice to take forward always, but I feel like that's not really going to be mattering too much even for Hyped. He would need kill to guarantee a AWP and zero utility, and the way Big plays, I have a feeling they're not a zero util kind of team. At least especially not for the rookies who aren't really being set up to be the stars in the same way. Endpoint's about to find a very vacant A site, Michael. The USBs in the back lines are so going to find little to nothing. Keto, good for the one. He's trying to go forward and recover the AK, but he will be flanked and attacked from the front at the same time. That means Stabson is the last man standing, and with all 4 players being full HP, the double link necessary, I feel like it might be a little bit unlikely for him to survive here. MHL is down to that 64 mark, where you can be a bit too susceptible to a headshot, but it's easy enough.
Apologies. But Endpoint are in a difficult position now, coming with less ideal weapons than they would otherwise like against the full buy here of Big. His MAC-10s are not going to do the best, and with Heavy God already being dropped, at least that could be a weapon that is retrieved. I've been dropping that weapon in middle. But still being a nuisance, being a presence.
Which is true. Mighty Maxwell jumping up and down. Look, it's a MAC-10, so it's a lot more excusable. But Will does get the better of him with the good old kangaroo jumps. Frog leaps his way out of this. Assassinito moving in as well. These MAC-10s continue to be deadly, and I'm sure Hyped is happy that he is one of the 2 remaining players who actually have head armor. Crimbo forced off the angle in the meanwhile, and that means that Endpoint have so much space to work with. Surreal's death makes it a bit more difficult, and Farven is not going to stop yet. The B-bomb site still, however, will be the target of attack just by a very lonely Mighty Max.
Yeah, taking a while for Favin to really get engaged in this game, and this is the biggest multi I think we've seen from him thus far, and very sharp on each and every one of the fights. Secured an opener, and then basically sealed the round in. Big's first gun round sees success. And Endpoint will be in it with another buy, but it will not be pristine weapons across the board. Not sure if that's a smoke that Endpoint themselves threw towards middle or not. The way that Favin was playing around it, that gap looked like it was by design, but not something that I imagine Endpoint will have in their own util to set up for a one-way in mid.
I'm wondering if Keto wants to get aggressive as well later on into this. Big is one of those teams that realizes the importance of finding enough information to get the stack in order or something around those lines. Favin right down the gap in middle as well as to the side. He's just able to pick them all apart. Doesn't want to let them set up with the Deagles and the like. Can be very difficult to actually defend a bomb set, even if you are having some fantastic players on your lineup like Big does.
NHL immediately giving that weapon over to somebody with higher HP. Surreal came in with a Deag, but has found himself an upgrade, and Flashes will make it somewhat known as to what the end objective is here from Endpoint. Absent even peeling away so that Favin could have an easier fight. But they're not making any sudden moves here on the Endpoint side. Max spotted and Favin revealing his position as well.
Bomb's going to take a while to actually move back over, and in the meanwhile, Big are just setting up to quickly collapse back onto A. Crimbo guarding out for 1, make it 2, and MHL is not really feeling healthy in taking the duel, but he knows that he has to at this point. It's all about getting the extra frag, and with Favin as well, is winning out that particular matchup. Assassinito just a dead man walking. Unfortunately, he's really not had his game so far, despite us maybe picking him up a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, and not exactly the most threatening, round there from Endpoint all in all, especially when they pump the brakes like it. Grimbo just maintained his position. They had deep A main control. He didn't have to be worried about anything else. And Endpoint didn't actually, I think, piece it together quite quick enough that there was that extra man inside of A main. But what can you do? Like you said, Sasania's had the short straw, I think, so far this game.
Yeah.
And wow, the spam in from under straight to mid. They understood that these pistols were likely going to go for some kind of a rush play, identifying that nice and early. Using the appropriate amount of utility to combat that presence.
That's all the information in the world that Keto just got. He's just subscribed to the Endpoint newspaper right there. Like, oh, yeah, what's the headline looking like? Oh, heading over to the B bomb set. Well, better let my boys know. Weather report is in, and it is 100% chance of Glocks coming over, and they've got more than enough umbrellas.
Yeah, nice 4K there from Faven. Keto didn't get full confirmation on the numbers, so they weren't fully committed to what was a B-sided play, but yeah, they didn't have to worry too much when Faven locks it in like that. They saw the nade in Keto's hands, or his possession, I suppose. We'll get very little off of that, I guess, no-buy round. Back out with guns. No team will have the AWP as of yet. Still early enough in this half that making that deep dive on the investment is only likely to occur when they feel it is at most necessary, or whether they have the actual funds to afford it, but didn't have that luxury.
Grenades at his feet, smoke as well. Hyped is unhappy.
Yeah.
He just runs off. What?
The flash is enough for him to get out, actually.
Feels like Endpoint also just aren't quite in position to pressure that further any longer. They're renavigating back to have some mid control where Faven's been a terror. He's been a nightmare to deal with. Cave as well. An area which Keto has been very proficient at defending. But with 3 players coming his way, this might prove to be difficult. Tapston not far off to give a bit more backup if they'd like to go for a double swing or two. MHL is down. Tapston to come out with some more cover, more likely than not, but actually wants to work out the one-way instead. And that's not the best, but with Hype coming in from behind, he does find Sassanito, leaving Max very low with the bomb. It needs to be a return frag from Surreal and fast, and as he does drop down, Hype is a freebie, but with the amount of information that's been given up, Big can angle comfortably back towards the B bomb, so there's no time to rotate, there's no time to do anything.
Oh, maybe there is enough time to get this plant down now as well. Falcon just has to be caught on the cross, but Heavy got dropped, and now a surreal 1 versus 2 where that Molotov obscures vision, and Crimbo will capitalize. That shot from Surreal was lovely to give them a chance back into it, but Big were swarming, they were all over them, and they realized that they had that time on their side as well. What do you do when there's so much information available for the CTs? They wanted to provide presence. They got Heavy God in a position where he had this flank on A, but it's just so late into the round that it was difficult to actually convert. You see the perspective difference. You saw it from Surreal's POV when he was taking the fight, but Crimbo could see him bright as day. Honestly, the CT side has done wonders for Faven's confidence.
Oh, yeah. And that is one of the things which I don't know. I wish that I was more informed so that I could have a more direct opinion. I want to know why Faven never ended up being that big star player. I also, honestly, I thought he would be pretty suitable as a replacement for Zentaris. He seemed mechanically maybe not quite there, because Zentaris is obviously one of the best mechanical players we've ever had, but he wasn't too far off and whatnot. Maybe it is a confidence thing, and this will help.
We hyped as well to build some himself. He's struggling in this game, but may not even be deemed necessary against this half-buy. Got missed, and hyped will actually stay alive. Absent died behind him. Slow burner. A slow roll from a few of these big members that have been coveted with having some big performances for the big clan previously. Captain Krimbo did a lot of the heavy lifting in that first half, but now that they're on the CT side, that the same protocols, the same rehearsal and procedures that we were waxing lyrical about on Mirage are still coming to play here as well, especially with, you know, the added benefits of what I was talking about earlier. Big do a lot of homework and really put in the work on these new maps. Hyped, 2 lovely kills in middle against the full gun round of Endpoint, already making this a situation of recovery for the Endpoint side.
Surreal had an ace on the B-bomb side earlier on that really did save their behinds. I feel like might be a bit much to ask for, but maybe just 4 kills this time, right?
Yeah,
Just. Not asking for too much there. Flashbang should force off Hype at the very least, but he'll just peek right back into it. Does not want to give up the angles as an Ito. He's about to walk into an AWP, and unless they go for another flashbang, I feel like I don't really favor his chances. Keto found Surreal, collects 2, and you know what, Michael? Maybe you're underestimating the man. He's got 2 out of 4. Hey, that's all it took.
Still got to be keeping their wits about them. Favin inserting himself in at the glyph. It's such a hard angle to clear. Surreal swinging for it, but dropped. He only gets his 2 kills, but MHL there to compensate. So back to a 2-on-2. What started off as a 2-man advantage here for Big is suddenly a clutch they have to win back.
We saw the same issue come up in Mirage in 2 different rounds. One of them Big was able to clutch regardless, but this is much more difficult. They do have a smoke and both players can be locked out. That's a one big saving grace, and there's an incendiary on the side as well. Hype will have to be the one to cover. Krimbo's the only one with a kit, let's not forget, and they could line up the spray. And with the AWP being the major thing to actually try and separate, that will not be an easy spray. Molotov as well now picked up, and they cannot actually line it up. He's sticking it. Krimbo should be able to get this one. He's on the right side. They're just not ready for it. They're not connecting on any of the shots. Even inside the smoke, they will fall.
That looked awful. That looked genuinely terrible. You know, to be sectioned off by one piece of utility like that, sure, there was a Molotov that sort of made it more difficult for them to move around inside of Dark, but neither of them willing to take that risk or chance it through the smoke. They understood that was really the position that Big were kind of relying upon or hoping for, but they didn't even have the bomb lined up for the dismissal of the defuse. I mean, really solid work there for Big to keep it in their favor, but that's a bit of a chance given over, and Hyped as well will be found through the smoke. They tried to boost over it, and they've lost 3 in an instant. This has been the worst opener that we've seen out of Big so far on this CT side, and it only gets worse. Krimbo also floored. Endpoint up to double digits.
I like that strat, Max. Really, that's a good set piece.
Yeah, do that again.
Go find 2 kills through the mid smoke.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
One of the first times we've seen Endpoint go for a fast mid play, in fairness, so that's why Big decided they wanted to try and boost up around this smoke, but once Favin was found, they knew somebody else had to be nearby. And it was just constant compensation, it felt like, from the remaining Big players. Pretty looking round to kill everybody and have no deaths, but
keep an eye out, MHL.
I was gonna say not too repeatable, but there he goes.
Hype is just that's a very difficult angle to actually try and hardscope forward with, right? There's a lot of different verticalities. There's a few places where the black part of your scope is just going to mess you up, and that's exactly what ends up happening to Hype. Now Tapson pushing in through the smoke. If he'd pulled the trigger there, that would have been a little bit unreal.
Make sure not to get spammed as well behind that smoke, considering he's 13 HP.
Yeah. Often dodges out the Molotov. Krimbo will be turning away from the flash and knows he needs to contest and challenge. Good for the one. Can he go for more? Remember, HP is a big problem. Farman, however, is about as healthy as can be until Heavy God changes that around a little bit. 2 versus 3, Tabson is low. I don't think Big want to go for this.
Well, Keto is still chancing it and finds Heavy God, so it's back to 2-on-2, and this AWP is on a flank. So long as Tabson's able to draw some attention away, it'll actually give Keto a little bit more room to play off of.
Very on plant though, and Tabson will be able to start to draw them back a little bit, like you mentioned, but the smoke, it doesn't work out for them. Tabson's position is known, and now Mighty Max, even if he is having a rough game, will not be contended with by Tabson, does not want to make that attempt.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that Tabson goes with this particular line, considering it drew down to the one-on-one, but his position known, and it's just not having that health to trade. If he was at least at like 70 HP, maybe that would have been his cutoff point. One bullet, even a stray, would have been enough to do him in. Nice opening kills from the Endpoint side, and once they commanded middle control, we didn't see the same sort of great react. I mean, we saw some good reactions from Big when they'd lost mid control previously, whether it was the containment procedures for the utility. This time they don't want to get caught with the same nades in hand, and they sort of leave Endpoint to their own devices in that area of the map, playing more contained inside of the sites. We have a double AWP setup. It's surrounded by shotguns and pistols, but sometimes the AWP is all you need.
Sometimes the Mag 7's all you need as well. Sassanito around the corner is about to find that out. Falvin covering that off. There's no grenade over here yet. Grimbo will end up falling to it, but it's actually given time and space for Keto to push in from behind. And there's still yet one more push to go. Hype to come in from around the corner. Will find the bomb and drop it there and then. Big, what should not have been a round they had much of a chance in, is about to be collecting on the 15th.
Jeez. Wasn't expecting that Falvin would be able to get that success. You know, the shotgun up close there on A main was really the setup that they were hoping for, would draw them into the AWP, but then Keto was the massive surprise. Endpoint were so fixated in dealing with that A main pressure, they get flanked. Sorry, it was Crimbo that got the kill on the mag, but the result is all the same. Oh, it was kind of a risky buy for them to go in with in the double AWP setup, but turns out they're at 15 and they will get their 4 chances. Keto, 1 for 1 is all he'll get. Tabson already lost on the B main pursuit, and that will open up access towards this side of the map for Endpoint to look for a finish.
It all really comes down to Crimbo over here to see if he can find a kill or two, otherwise Big just move back and try to save, I think. Double AWP retake is never easier with a smoke down. Yeah, there's no chance.
Tabson's not attempting the 1v1 with the AWP.
Yeah,
They're not attempting
true.
this.
Okay, fair.
You have to gauge their philosophy as time moves forward, but there will be a few attempts to close out this map. Still available here for Big, especially courtesy of the save. Endpoint are still worried about stability in their own ranks and their own funds. Only stable hand they've had thus far is MHL and Surreal, or I guess stable hands. It is strange to see all the role and position swaps with Endpoint, with all the way that they've been bringing in new players and having different fifths. Heavy God's been taking more lurking priorities as of the Sassanito reacquisition, or I guess implementation.
Before that, Mestel was on those roles, yeah.
Yep. I think Heavy God was playing those roles before Mestel, and then so, we're back and forth, back and forth.
Oh. What a mess.
Yeah.
They must be having to change out stand-ins and styles so often, but Endpoint are still putting up a fight.
Big are the team that have always been plagued by stand-ins.
Oh, yeah.
This team is ready and rearing to go, and they have been so far in this lower bracket. Fantastic peek in from Keto, the smoke fading at just the right moment to catch MHL.
Great advantage to find over here, and Falvin might be looking for one more. Lines up for it for sure, but he actually gives it up courtesy of trying to go for the one-way. Wants it to be a little bit safer, and indeed it is, but feel like he might have gotten that kill regardless.
Ooh.
Surreal so good. Surreal and Heavy God find the advantage again, and although the one-way smoke is still down, Crimbo could do nothing. Not in that angle, the one-way doesn't work there.
Wow, what a twist. And so rapidly at that, Surreal left on his lurk through the B bomb site, but he's missed the timing to actually find Hype. Low HP, they should know that he is around here somewhere. You see they're very conscious of the fact that he could have pushed through the canals and over towards that A site, but they do reroute that bomb back to B. Hype is sticking around. Sasanita, that was the bomb that had to make its transition in, but Surreal will finally find him.
Okay, listen, I'm sorry, that isn't... There is no world in which that 1v3 is more justifiable than the 1v1.
Than tabseN's 1v1. Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%.
And look, there's certain justifications you can give, like theoretically, hey, you don't have a buy round in the next round and this time over, before you could maybe like scramble something together, yada yada yada. I don't care. This is on principle.
There's also the caveat of tabseN's non-ulper, Hyped is.
Bad caveat.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, doing what I can. But the devil's in the details, and right now, Big have not been able to find the right solutions to what Endpoint are offering up. Even if they're finding opening kills, even if they're having man advantages, there is always something to answer back in these past couple of rounds. And Big, in with the last buy that they have, the last round of regulation to prevent Endpoint from bringing us to an overtime.
Of course, tabseN's had a much quieter game in these past few rounds. I think he's gone from like 23-15 or maybe 22-15 to something around his current scoreline as well. Not been having the same monstrous impact as he was earlier on, and unfortunately for him, the same cannot be said for MHL, who has continued to be the rock of Endpoint. 32-17, Surreal not too far behind on 27.
And Heavy God getting some activation as well in what was a round recovery just gone by. Full exchange of util damage. Max will still chance the peak, and Keto's been lightning quick on these fights towards Dark.
Another advantage found for the big clan, but we have already ascertained that that does not mean that a win is certain.
Three players brought over towards that B-bomb side. That was the setup they started with, but again, they just have this massive gap and this issue to deal with in middle. It is being watched for on the cross by Crimbo, but tabseN will look to alleviate that strain. Flash is beautiful, but Heavy God will be able to dip out in time before there's an additional kill found here by the big clan. 30 seconds, and they're making their move on B.
They've only got a single flashbang. That's all it'll be to try and force Hype off the angle, so will end up being completely blinded. Can't dodge it out quite as well as you would have liked to see it, and now he cannot repeat back in. He knows it, but tabseN's good for one. He turns away into the smoky with a tabseN. Could have maybe, rather Crimbo could have maybe come through and covered him off there. MHL now all alone, a 1-on-3 to differentiate from overtime, and he's good for one. Almost gets a second. Looked like he was lining up for the full clutch, but Crimbo, despite accelerating past his teammate, is able to get the frag. Big will collect on 16. Endpoint will be eliminated from the CCT Online Finals.
Yeah, a 2-0 from the big clan. They took Endpoint's map so handily, but here on Anubis, where it looked like they had a bunch of advantages coming in terms of the tactics that they might be able to offer up, the form that they looked like coming out of map 1, it could have ended up being a much sort of cleaner affair for this big team, but they had met some difficulties in Surreal and MHL, and the rest of the team ended up getting engaged as well as we got further and further through this game. But it was very topside heavy for a time, and as much as you would have wanted to say that Big should have made this more convincing, they still were able to pick up the pieces where necessary. They found a number of advantages that were pulled away ultimately by some of the good form by some of the Endpoint players.
Absolutely. And one of the things to keep in mind as we go forward on the big journey in the lower bracket is that if they get stuck like that, Tapson can't find the frags, he's cooled down a lot, and the rest of his team aren't quite able to perform. Even when they get the man advantages, they will not go far, right? Their next match is going to be very tough. If you look over towards the upper bracket, which we'll show soon after as well, it will be against the loser between Into the Breach and Forza. That's not an easy game. I will repeat that again and again. Big are in for a tough time. Of course, in the lower bracket again, our next match was going to be Bad News Eagles going up against 9. But to quickly discuss the MVP for my money, Michael, I've got to say, I think this is going to be the first and maybe the only time I'll say it in the tournament. It comes with a losing team. It has to be MHL for me.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly reasonable. I mean, if you're going to pick from the winning team, I think it's hard not to say that Tabson probably takes that marker, given that he was just so instrumental in the Mirage and the Anubis performance, respectively, to even make this game as competitive as it was at the start of it. So, yeah, I mean, MHL definitely honorable shout out if we don't pick MVPs from losing teams.
Well, you know what? He looked like he was playing on a winning team, even if the rest of his team quite wasn't there with him. Both him and Surreal had a fantastic performance. Good to see Surreal pick things back up as well, right? It is just a reminder that he has been stepping up very heavily. Mirage was hopefully just an anomaly, and for the Endpoint fan going forward, listen, might not be the best finish right now in this event, right? But at the same time, it is a lot of good signs for their lineup as soon as they get a stable 5 going, a bit more practice to figure out what the role situation is as well, and they'll be at a good place. I have no doubt about that. But unfortunately, they're in a bad place right now because out of the damn tournament. Who is still in the tournament? Let's take a look at the schedule for the rest of the day and actually figure that out as well, Michael.
Yeah, of course, Big still maintaining their life in this tournament, but we still have to say goodbye to one more team within our lower bracket run of games. Of course, the next teams that we have up are 9 versus Bad News Eagles, who find themselves in that lower bracket. So, I mean, the other teams that remain, they're all in the upper bracket. They still got another life still let to live.
And, well, we're going to wait to see exactly what is going to be coming over in just a bit. Obviously, we've got a slightly longer break than normal because of how convincing Big was. So we'll be back in about 50 minutes or so. That's 5-0. So at about 2:20 p.m. CEST, if I'm not wrong. So make sure you guys are back here then for some more Counter-Strike action.
A very complicated job, but I love simple things so much. One move. One push. One touch. One love. One click. One X-Bet.
Trying to get the skin of your dream for a long time but can't get it in any way? On our website you have a unique opportunity to get your favorite knife. Users on our site can hand out skins themselves, and participants need to fulfill some simple conditions. For example, watch a video or buy a case on our website. After that, you automatically become a member of the distribution. Go to the user giveaways tab and do what you like. Hellcase. Are you...